Rachel from 7 and All, and today I'm going to be talking about how to plan ahead for your homeschool. This isn't just day-to-day or month-by-month planning, but seriously planning your homeschool 1, 2, or 3 years at a time. So if you have been watching the 7 and All homeschool channel for a while, you will notice that we never really have the really dramatic videos where it's I'm changing everything and dropping everything a month or two into the school year. We're going in a completely different direction. We're dropping this, we're starting something new. And there's a good reason for that. We don't do that in our homeschool, and we also can't really do that in our homeschool. We can make some minor changes, but we usually can't make big dramatic changes in our resources that we're using because we are homeschooling overseas. We have a limited amount of time and limited amount of space for getting homeschool materials to where we live, because we can't just click a button on Amazon and get a new book the next week. That's not an option available to us, so we do really focus on planning ahead. If you watched my haul videos recently, I've mentioned that I have planned at least the next 2 years of my son's homeschool. I've planned out for kindergarten in first grade, even though we are only in pre-K right now, and I've been buying the resources I'm going to need for those years. So I've gotten some questions on how to do that, how to kind of be forward-looking enough to have a sense of where you're going and what resources you're going to need. I hope that this is helpful to families who are in situations like ours where you might need to buy your resources a couple years at a time. And I also hope that it's helpful for any homeschool family to just kind of have that peace of not feeling like, oh, I need to plan everything constantly and be ready to change everything up, but to be able to plan your homeschool from a sense of peace of, I kind of know where I'm going. In the comments down below, please feel free to share some of your tips and the strategies that have been effective for you as you have looked ahead in your long-term homeschool planning. I would love to hear about your methods. Every homeschool family works a little bit differently, but I'm going to be sharing some tips that I find helpful and I hope are helpful to you. The number one helpful factor when you want to do long-term homeschool planning is to know your homeschool very well. Know your own personal homeschool style, your abilities. Know your children and their homeschool style, needs, and abilities. What I mean by this is that if you are head over heels with living books and literature and that type of learning, probably don't invest in full curriculum Abeka kits, including the history and geography and the science and all of that, because you've invested all that time and you've set all that up, but that's not actually the homeschool style and approach that you want to take. So knowing yourself is going to help a lot. If your child is not able to be an independent learner, either at this phase or just by temperament, don't invest in a lot of child-led and independent types of curriculums. So this is what I mean by know yourself, know your children very well. That is incredibly helpful with being able to plan. Now, knowing yourself and knowing your children's learning style does come with time, so this can be harder when you are newer to the homeschool world. I do have a lot of experience with using different curriculums and a pretty wide variety of styles and approaches, so I know my own approach very well, and I know what types of curriculums I am most likely to like. I know how to adapt curriculums to make them fit my family and my situation. I know that I am not an online kind of curriculum kind of girl. So I need to plan ahead to be able to buy physical books, because that is a priority for me and for my family, is to have hard copies, physical books to work with. I just don't buy into a lot of digital learning. There's some elements where it's necessary, but I do try to keep it very minimal. That's part of my homeschool, my values, and I need to plan for that value. So once you know yourself, you know your kind of general ideas of where you're going, what's going to fit you and your kids. Number 2 step of planning is, of course, write down every category that you're going to need to teach in different years. And that's going to be a little bit different from year to year. That's going to be a little bit different from family to family. Not every family does all of the same subjects. There's some core subjects, but we have some different priorities. For example, in my family, Spanish is a core subject for us. That is something I need to plan for. Whereas for many families, that's not going to be core, that's not going to be part of the overarching plan throughout all of homeschool. For my family, Bible is considered a core subject. That is something I plan for, I teach Bible, and always will. So every family is going to have to write down their own categories for different years. And for example, maybe in kindergarten, your focus will more be on phonics. Then in first grade, you might be moving on to more of early elementary LA, getting beyond phonics, although you probably still will be continuing phonics. So get out that notebook, piece of paper, or your Google Doc if you're more techie, or your notes thing on your phone if you're a phone person, and write down all those categories for each year that you're trying to plan for and for each child that you're planning for. Get your kind of mind map. I am very much a paper and pencil kind of person. Write it down in my planner. That's how I roll. But in whatever way that works for you, write down all those categories. Look and be kind of careful that you didn't miss anything that is a big priority to you. Now, once you have all of your categories written down, then start filling in. Okay, I have math for kindergarten. What am I going to use for math for kindergarten? Okay, I've got that filled in. Now what will I use for math for first grade? So start filling in all your different categories. If you're early on in your research, you could maybe jot down a couple options that you're looking at and then give yourself time to look into those further. Depending on your situation, you might not need to be like me and buying all physical materials far in advance, but still having that plan and kind of writing down what options you think you're heading towards can be very, very helpful. So I have a little map like that for my sons, for what is kindergarten and first grade going to look like, what is pre-K, what is 3-year-old preschool, and what is 4-year-old preschool going to look like for my younger son. The next step that you should think about is decide what are going to be the major themes of the next couple years that you're looking into. And by themes, I mean generally those are pretty influenced by your history and your science, or those type of topics. Math and language arts don't tend to be so influenced by theme. Those are just teaching basic skills, foundational skills that build on each other. But we do have these major themes and different major approaches. And so look at your own homeschool and decide, what are you going to do? There's a 4-year history cycle. There's a 3-year history cycle. There's totally different approaches. You could take, if you're using Sunlight, maybe you're using the Sunlight's approach of certain years you're studying world history, certain years you study American history. As you get up there, you might study history of science, history of the church. Kind of look at your own life, looking forward, and think which major themes would fit my own life, fit my kids best in the upcoming years. For me, I decided not to start with history in kindergarten with my son. I have some big ideas on how history should be taught. I'll try to leave a card to my video on teaching history well. And I think one thing that helps us to teach history well is for kids to be a little bit older. My son is not going to be a very old kindergartner. He's just going to be 5. So I decided, you know what? I'm in no rush to start teaching history. I'm going to start with world geography. It kind of fits our lifestyle a little bit better. It fits my philosophy a little bit better. And I can wait on history, and maybe I start with American history in first grade or second grade. So some people choose to start with history in the history of the country where they live first, before branching out into world history or history in different ages. There are several different approaches. Look into those and figure out which fits your family best. The same with science. There are many different approaches. Some people do shorter term unit studies. Some people prefer year-long studies of one area or discipline within science. Others prefer year-long courses that kind of cover different scientific investigative fields. So there's quite a few different approaches you can take. I don't think one of them is wrong or right, but you got to pick one and kind of roll with that system in both history and science, because you don't want to be switching up too often. You don't want to necessarily start with, oh, we're going to do a 4-year history cycle, get bored of that 2 years in, skip the next 2 years and do something totally different. You know what I mean? So kind of pick something and roll with it. Of course, you know, there's not so many rules. You might end up picking something, it might not work seriously, and you might need to change, but ideally try to figure out what approach you're going to take, and ideally try to stick to that approach for the next couple of years. And in the end of all that, as you're writing your plan, and if you need to buy materials, and if you're like me, that once you buy the materials, that's it. You've got your materials all the way to Southeast Asia, and there's no other options for you for the next year or two. Just be decisive. You picked it, you put the research into it, you put the time into a good decision, and you can make it work. curriculum does not actually make or break your homeschool. There are other things that can make or break your homeschool, but curriculums can all be adapted. You can make it work. There will be some curriculums that will be a better or worse fit for particular kids, and sometimes your decision is not going to be perfect, but there needs to be a level of just being content with what you have, what you purchased, and making it work, even if that does require some adaptations. When possible, I do recommend that you try to just keep rolling with the same curriculum and go to the next one. That's not always going to be possible, but sometimes as homeschoolers, we can get a little bit of FOMO and we can get a little bit of really jumping around, always searching for the perfect curriculum. There is no perfect curriculum. There's only curriculum, and then how we implement it, how we use it, how we teach, and how we build this relationship with education with our kids. So once you have that piece that there's no perfect curriculum out there, you know that I can be free to just roll with this. I go from kindergarten to first grade to second grade, and I'm not gonna super stress about maybe there's something better out there. I'm just gonna kind of roll with it. And if there is truly a serious issue, if there's something that I am hating about this curriculum, okay, no, you don't have to force yourself to use something. But when something's working reasonably well, you can just roll with it. You don't have to totally change it up all the time. So that is something that our family does quite a bit. We're not always looking for something else and something new out there. We typically just kind of work through the next level of that curriculum. And we definitely do implement some new options or better options as they make sense, but it's not something we're constantly on the search for. Now, my last tip, and I think this is really key and something that a lot of newer homeschoolers don't understand, is that you don't have to plan exactly when you're going to finish a certain level of curriculum and when you are going to start the next level. Because I think they feel like, in the planning, they need to have the dates all figured out and the months figured out, and how long is it going to take to finish 180 lessons or all that. That's not something I do at all. I have seen in homeschool, it's very normal that some year-long curriculums will finish in half the year or 3/4 of a year. And other year-long curriculums might take a year and a half. It's just really going to depend on the situation and the curriculum. We teach at the speed of learning, not at the speed of the book. So we teach at the speed of learning. That's very important in our homeschool, and our kids have tended to be on the faster side. So we very well might end up going through 2 years of curriculum a little on the fast side. That's okay. We just start the next year a little early. We just roll with it. You just start the next level when you've finished the old level and when you're doing schoolwork and you're not taking a break. So I don't really worry about having curriculums line up exactly with school years. Our family does generally follow a pretty traditional school year because my husband is a school teacher, so we take time off when he's off. But I don't worry about curriculum lining up exactly with those dates. I hope that this was helpful and got your gears turning on how you can do long-term planning in your homeschool and whether or not it would be beneficial to you. Please feel free to share in the comments your favorite tips on planning ahead and anything that you're really looking forward to as you look forward to the next couple years of homeschool. All right, I will be seeing you next time. Bye!